Welcome to the Truth and Liberty broadcast. We believe we have a mandate to bring godly change to our nation and the world through the 7 spheres or mountains of influence. To further this cause, we give away a product every week that will empower you to get involved in changing your life and changing our world. You can register for our weekly giveaway by subscribing at truthandliberty.net. You can also subscribe to our newsletter to receive weekly updates on guests, news, and much more. This is an interactive live cast, and we welcome your questions. To ask a question during the live cast, use the comment or chat features. Now get ready to dive into this week's topics with our hosts on location in Colorado, USA.
Hello, I'm Andrew Wommack, and welcome to our Monday Night Truth and Liberty live cast. And tonight we've got a special guest with us, Rick Green, and we'll give him a better introduction here in a little bit. But he's got some really positive things to share with you. You know, we often have to highlight all of the negative things that are going on, trying to wake people up. But Rick is doing some really positive things. Right before the program started, he was sharing a lot of really encouraging things. And so I believe this is something that will not only encourage you, but many of you could participate in the things he's doing. So we'll be talking about that here in just a little bit. But I've got Richard Harris with me. He's our executive director here at Truth and Liberty, and he's going to share with you some of the meetings and ways that you can get involved tonight.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. And thanks to all of you who are watching tonight. This is going to be a great show. Really looking forward to it. If you're watching on YouTube, I want to encourage you to jump over and watch directly on our website. You're going to have a better viewing experience there, and you're not going to get censored, so be sure to do that. And then also, speaking of our website, have you checked out our resources page lately? You need to do that. We've got some great stuff on there, including links about, let's see here, lost my place in my notes. Well, there's some good stuff on there, I tell you that. I know I had it loaded 2 weeks ago. Oh, ESG scores. Do you remember our live cast a few weeks ago where we talked about ESG scores and how the World Economic Forum is rolling that out? You can find information on that, and also lots of helpful links to help you get involved. Here at the ministry, there's some great events coming up, including next week is the annual Men's Advance at Charis Bible College with Tony Dungy and James J.B. Brown. I tell you, this is just such an awesome event, the Men's Advance. Guys, you need to come out and get recharged, refired, and you know, there's something about when men come together to worship God. Andrew will be ministering along with those gentlemen, and it's going to be awesome. Charis Campus Days is coming up April 6th through the 8th. Campus Days, I have a dear place in my heart for Campus Days because that's when God really touched Donna and me and brought us out here and changed the whole course and direction of our lives. And if you're wondering if God is calling you to something greater, something bigger, something where you're living on the edge, come to Campus Days and hear the voice of God change your life. The David musical, this is my favorite of all the Murin musicals. It's called David, King of Jerusalem, and it gives you, it's just like an anointed insight into the heart of David and his relationship with God. That's April the 8th. You can register for that at awmi.net, so check that out. Are you a subscriber to Truth and Liberty? If you're not, you need to be. Every week we send out helpful, useful information to our subscribers about what's going on, how to get involved, how to make a difference. And if you'll go to our website, upper right-hand corner, just click subscribe, share your email, you can be on that list, and we will send you, you'll be eligible to receive a gift in the mail, one of Andrew's books. Last week we gave away More Grace, More Favor, Andrew's latest book, to Bobby Grant. Congratulations, Bobby. You'll be getting an email soon about how you can claim that. And this week we're giving away Spirit, Soul, and Body. This is, would it be fair to say, is your foundational teaching?
It is. That's what opened up my heart to understand.
And what I say about it is, once you understand this, I don't know how you can understand the New Testament, really, without this revelation. It makes everything come together and make sense. If you're watching tonight and you have a question for us or for Rick or for Andrew, post that in the comment section on Facebook or in the chat function on our website. And then also, if you want to help us at Truth and Liberty to make a difference, which we are making a difference, we are growing by leaps and bounds and making a big impact. You can become a member of Truth and Liberty by going on our website to the donate page and just signing up to make a recurring automatic donation of $5 or more per month, and you'll will be an important part of what we're doing. And we will send you a free gift in the mail of Alex McFarland's book, The Assault on America, How to Defend Our Nation Before It's Too Late. Last thing I want to tell you tonight is if you need someone to agree with you in prayer, just call into our phone center, 719-635-1111, and a Spirit-filled, Word of God trained prayer minister will be standing by to help you out. So that's all I've got, Andrew.
Amen. So our guest tonight is Rick Green. He's from Dripping Springs, Texas, is what I heard, somewhere around the Austin area. And anyway, Rick has been associated with Charis Bible College for quite a while. Our practical government school that Richard ran for a while, they actually participate in his Patriot Academy, and he trains people. We'll be talking about that. And he's also started, what is the name of the new one? The
Biblical Citizenship.
Biblical Citizenship, and this is what I was excited about. So he's also associated with David Barton, and he hosts the radio program with David Barton, Wall Builders, and of course, you know, David Barton is one of our board members here. And so anyway, Rick is just doing a great, great job. So welcome to our program, Rick. Thank you for coming and being with us tonight.
I'm honored to be with you guys. Anytime I can be with fellow Patriots, I love it. And what better name for a show, Truth and Liberty? I mean, what you guys are speaking truth and you're defending liberty, so I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
That's right. We're
awesome.
glad.
Amen.
Amen. So give our viewers here a little bit of background. How did you get started? I know that you were associated with David Barton, and he, in a sense, discipled you, but then you've got your own ministry going, and what's going on with you?
Well, man, I'm very blessed. I've been learning at David's feet for I'm going to age myself and him a little bit, but 25 years now, all the way back to when I was a state rep here in Texas. In fact, he came down and campaigned for me when I first ran. I was only 4 years old I was in my late 20s though. So, but David and Cheryl have just been, you know, they've really been great mentors to my wife, Kara, and me, and they helped us start Patriot Academy all those years ago. And I really did it, honestly, guys, out of frustration. I was in the Texas House looking around going, where's all the conviction-oriented people? Where are the people that are making their decisions based on some biblical worldview, not just finger to the wind, whatever's popular? And honestly was really disappointed. And, you know, my dad was the one that said to me, why not do something with the youth? Why not start to raise up a new generation that gets it, that has that biblical worldview and the skills necessary to be effective in this arena? And so David and Cheryl Barton helped us start Patriot Academy all those years ago. And a couple of decades later, we've trained hundreds of thousands of people on the Constitution. We trained a whole lot of young people on how the process works, how to be good citizens, and how to be good leaders, kind of how to find their passion too. I mean, they're young when they come to our program. They're 16 up to 25. Kind of that time in your life when you're really figuring out what you believe, like what do I believe? Not what does mom and dad believe, or what do I believe? And that's a really good time for us to get them on the House floor and let them experience their government, but pound in some good biblical worldview while we're at it.
So give a little explanation. What is Patriot Academy? How long does it go? What do they learn? What is Patriot Academy?
Yeah, that flagship program, which is really, that's all we did for the first 10 or 15 years of the foundation, but it was a chance to bring these kids in from all over the country and put them on the real house floor. So instead of just sitting in a lecture hall and us talking to them about government or talking to them about their job and role as a citizen and their duty, we wanted to put them in the hot seat, let them see what it was like to file a bill, to debate that bill on the House floor or in committee, to hear from people that were serving in government or serving in entertainment or the pulpit or whatever area of life. And throughout that week that they're at the Capitol, then what we're hoping for and praying for every time is that at some moment there'll be that aha moment where God speaks to them and says, that's the desire I put in your heart. That's the arena I want you to go lead in. And so they learn, really how government works, but they also learn speaking skills and all kinds of personal skills. And they really learn a good philosophical, biblical worldview of what government should look like. And not most, most of them don't run for office or go into politics. Probably 95% don't. They go into some other area of the culture. But all of them go into that area of the culture to be biblical citizens for the rest of their life. And that's our main program that we've been doing for 2 decades now.
So do they just get all this by observation in the house, or do you actually sit there and have classroom time that you teach them things, and what else?
Yeah, both. So we'll do the lectures where we do actually have a kind of an interactive format for them to learn. I actually take them basically into an experiment where they're designing government from scratch, and we say, okay, look, everything's falling apart, and you've got to start over. How would you design it? And it's amazing, guys. Every time, by the time we're done, they have designed the exact United States system that we have. So in other words, when I tell them or ask them, what freedoms would you want to have enshrined in this Constitution we're going to do? By the time it's over, they've all talked about the Second Amendment. They've all talked about freedom of religion. And when we get done, I say, guess what? Our founding fathers and the people that came before you preserved exactly that system that you would design from scratch. Now it's your job to step up and it's your turn to preserve and protect it. So it's interactive, but then they're on the real house floor trying to figure out, okay, well, if I believe in limited government and individual liberties and timeless truths and free enterprise, if those are the things I believe in, what does that look like when it comes to a bill that's, dealing with business regulation, or a bill that's dealing with freedom of religion, those types of things? And I just think that's the best place. If you don't entertain people, at this age, aren't going to pay attention long enough. And it's enough entertainment for them to stay engaged. And then when you're teaching them something they never heard before, and then you're giving them a way to apply it, man, it just creates inspiration in them from then on. And one other thing real quick about this academy that we've always done, at the end, we have military veterans at the graduation dinner that ceremonially pass the torch to them. So these kids are all called forward one by one. They sign the Declaration of Independence in a moment of pledging their lives, their fortunes, and sacred honor to the cause of liberty and to each other, as the Declaration says. And then they walk up to that military veteran who's standing there with a medal and a torch of freedom pin. And that military veteran says, I was willing to die for your freedom. Now it's time for you to go live it. And that sticks with an 18, 19, 20-year-old. And from then on, they're committed to the cause.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So if we've got some young people watching this, or if we got parents that they think, man, I'd like my young person to go through this, what do they have to do? Is it 1 week long? Do you pay for it? Is it only there in Dripping Springs, Texas, or where are you?
We used to do it only in Austin, Texas, because I said everybody's got to come to the Mecca of freedom, Texas. But we finally decided, we'd reach a lot more folks, and I had some supporters that said, hey, you got to bring it to Idaho, or you got to bring it to Arizona. So now we do it at the Idaho State Capitol, the Arizona State Capitol, the Florida State Capitol, the Delaware State Capitol, and this year for the first time we'll be coming to your neck of the woods. We're coming to the Colorado State Capitol.
Well, we need it.
But all those dates and everything's available at patriotacademy.com. And there is a tuition. It's really low. It covers their housing, everything. We have donors that support throughout the year to make that possible. And to answer your question about time, most of those programs around the country are 3 days. But because Colorado is just as awesome as Texas, those two are a full 7 days. So
that's because we need 7 days to get Colorado straightened out. But it's changing.
It's changing.
Truth and liberty. God is using truth and liberty. And David Barton has been here, what did you say, 5 different meetings in the last 3 weeks. And we're meeting with pastors, and we're seeing this state turn around. We're seeing things change.
Good.
So that's
awesome.
awesome.
We had flipped a bunch of school boards last fall, and there's momentum building.
I think we had, 78 candidates that we supported that were elected in 2021.
Yeah, that we put on a nonpartisan voter guide, and I tell you, it was awesome. But,
that's really good.
Well, and Rick, this Patriot Academy, you do it at the Practical Government School at Charis Bible College, and one of the things I like to watch is these students stand up and do role play as legislators, right? Can you comment on that? Is that part of the program that you do?
It is, yeah. We do that at the state capitals too. But the cool thing about what you guys do is by the time we're there and we do that simulation with them, that legislative simulation, y'all have poured so much into them. They're ready for some of that to come out, right? And to be practically applied in the legislative process. So it's really neat to watch that happen. And I think everybody should experience that. They should experience what it's like to have to debate a bill, defend the principle behind what you're doing. Why is it the proper role of government to deal with that particular issue? All of those things. And so it's really nice to be kind of in the hot seat, if you will, of a legislator and realize you're going to have people pulling at you from all directions. And do you have the courage to stand for truth, even if it's not popular? Because even in these programs, sometimes, I mean, it's fun to watch these students have to figure out, wait a minute, do I believe this strongly enough that I'm willing to be ridiculed for it or be disliked for it, or even have to vote against someone that I like? That's one of the hard lessons for legislators, because they're so chummy and everything, and they don't want to hurt each other's feelings. It's like you sometimes have, not sometimes, you always vote based on principle, not based on party, and not based on whether or not that might be your friend that's offering a bad idea. And that's a hard lesson to learn sometimes.
And also, you've now started the biblical citizenship amongst everything else that you're doing. Tell us about that.
Yeah, this one kind of started by accident, honestly. You know, David Barton and I did this Constitution class years ago. I taught the core of the Constitution part in Independence Hall, where the Constitution and the Declaration were done. And then we went into David's library, and he pulled all the stuff off the shelf, just like y'all do with him, and was teaching from that. And we made some videos of that. And people started taking that and the workbooks and doing almost like a Sunday school class with it. And they get people either in their home or at their church to walk through it. And we found out, I mean, it was really taking off around the country. And so we said, you know what, we need to kind of harness that and train people how to do that. So we repackaged it as Biblical Citizenship in Modern America, added a whole lot of new interviews. Kirk Cameron actually does his monument thing. You see the monument behind me. If you've been to the monument to the forefathers in Massachusetts, it's got this wonderful, wonderful design that basically walks you through why faith and morality are absolutely necessary for the security of our nation, for the law and all of those things to work. You got to have faith and morality. So Kirk does a big part of it. And then we have Rabbi Daniel Lappin and pastors and all kinds of folks teaching in the course. And I got to tell you guys, there are people right now that have given up on America. There are a lot of people that have decided it's all over, it's too far gone. And I challenge them, come do this class, go through this 8-week class and find hope for the nation, find hope for this system. The principles of liberty are not what has failed us. It's the leaders that moved away from those principles. God's law does not change. The laws of nature and nature's God don't change. The principles of liberty don't change. And when you look out there and you see all this negative stuff going on and you see all these bad results in the culture, you got to know those bad results are the direct response to bad policies. And bad policies come from bad leaders. We don't have to despair when we see the bad results. We just have to kind of follow that line and go, oh, well, if we change the leaders and we change the principles and we put the good principles back in, how many times do we see that in the Old Testament, right? If they do it God's way, good results. Yeah. If you ignore God's way and do it your own way, bad results. And that's what this course shows people, is that in America, biblical citizenship is what it's going to take to turn this thing around. So if anybody out there is kind of giving up on the system or thinking the principles don't work anymore, the Constitution is broken and doesn't work anymore, the system works, but we have to work the system. We have to be salt and light. And this course, Biblical Citizenship, teaches you how to do that.
So we've got a thing on our screen about, for more information, you can go to biblicalcitizenship.com. So you mentioned that it was an eight-week course. How does this work? Is there a charge to it? And how does it, what happens when you go to this? Where do you have to go to get it?
Yeah, it's free. We give it away. You can host the class for free. If you want to sign up at our website today, you can become a biblical citizenship coach, or what we call a Constitution coach, and you can host it in your home, in your living room. You can host it at your church. You get a free broadcast license to do that. Everybody that signs up gets access to a digital workbook, so they can do it on their phone or an iPad or their computer and go through the whole course. And I'll tell you guys, we've seen thousands of churches and people do this in their communities and seen incredible results. We're up to 12,000 Constitution coaches now. There are prairie fires, you know, if you want to call them brush fires of liberty, being lit all over the nation, and anybody can do it. I don't want anybody to think you gotta have a law degree or you gotta have loved it. I hated history in high school and college and government. They were boring. I slept through those classes. This is the David Barton way. It's fun. It's entertaining. When somebody finally gave me a cassette tape of David Barton for the first time and I listened to that, and now everybody knows how old I am when I talk about a cassette tape, but history came to life. It was like I could see history through the eyes of the people that lived it. It changed it for me big time. And that's how we do these courses. So they're the only Constitution courses you'll actually stay awake for. You'll be inspired, and you can get all your friends and family and do it at your home or at your church, wherever you want to do it. But I promise you, just 2 hours. I'm asking people to give 2 hours, one night a week for 8 weeks. It's an investment of your life. That's your time, your fortune, because you got to set aside that time away from something else, and your sacred honor. Start sharing with your friends and family. I promise you, you will see a brush fire of liberty begin out of that class.
And so a constitutional coach is just a person who's viewed this thing and participated, and then they basically host it for somebody else and they play videos and interact that way. They don't have to have any special skills or something.
That's it. If you can just blow the whistle, it's start time, you know, hit play on the DVD player, you're the coach. That's it. And I always tell our coaches, I'm like, if you haven't had time to watch the class yet, don't worry about it. Go ahead and invite people over and you watch with them. I mean, I'm America's Constitution coach, and I still get up in front of my live Constitution classes all the time, and I start with hey, I'm no guru. You're going to stump me tonight with some question about the Constitution I don't know the answer to, and then that's my homework. And I think if we all take that approach that we're in this to learn together, it's more fun, it's good fellowship, nobody's got pressure on them to have all the answers. I mean, we get that from that iron sharpening iron. We sharpen each other's countenance, and it's a fun time too. I mean, again, I know I've already said it, I got to stress it again. You're not going to fall asleep in this one. You'll actually have a great time, and you'll have great fellowship with the people you go through the class with. So
you've mentioned that you got 12,000 of these constitutional coaches. So what is your vision for this? Where do you think this is going? What kind of impact are you expecting?
Well, if we keep growing at the rate we are, and in my prayer every day, I ask the Lord to give us 5 million people to go through this course before the next presidential election. If we keep going at the rate we're going and the growth we've had the last 2 or 3 years, that's what we're going to reach. And to do that, we're going to need about 40,000 Constitution coaches. So to grow by another 400% from where we are right now will get us there. So I encourage people to go sign up, tell your friends and family about it. And one fun thing too, guys, is you can do the class just like what we're doing right now. You can get online and play the video with your friends and family from around the country. If you want to have folks from all the way across the nation join you for the class, because the magic really happens after the video's over. When the video finishes and you start talking to your friends and family and people at your church about these things, and you realize, wow, I'm not alone. I've been feeling, some despair about the country, and I realize I'm not the only one that realizes we've got real challenges. But then you realize there's hope. We can turn this thing around. The Lord tarries. He's not done with America yet. If we'll bring those principles back, and then we give you real action steps, things you can do to make a difference. That's another thing we want to do is plug them into Truth and Liberty, get them involved with you guys as well, because y'all do a lot of boots on the ground stuff beyond what we do with the class. And we want people to be a part of that as well. The voter guides, being involved at your church. Most people have no idea who they're going to vote for when they show up. They might know governor, they might know president, but then they go get down to that ballot and they're totally at a loss for who to vote for. So getting voter guides in the hands of your friends and family, educating and getting pastors to host these classes and give people hope at their church. There's so much. Everybody can do something, and we give them a lot of options on how to do that. Anybody can do this. Anybody can be a part of making a difference for our country right now.
So you mentioned that you're America's constitutional coach or whatever. So why is it important to know about the Constitution?
Man, this is our system, right? I mean, Jesus said, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's and unto God what is God's. Well, how can we render unto Caesar what is Caesar's if we don't know how Caesar operates in our system of government? It was actually kind of easy in Rome. I mean, see, whatever Caesar says goes, right? In our system, we're Caesar. So it's a little more difficult because with freedom comes responsibility. And I think for us to not know how our system works is a dereliction of duty. It's like being that wicked and slothful servant that was given the talent and buried it. We've been given this talent of freedom, this wonderful gift. And instead of multiplying it, working it, investing with it, we've buried it in most cases in our country. And that includes the church, right? The church just kind of stepped out and wasn't salt and light in the arena, doesn't really know how the process works. That's changing thanks to you guys and so many other ministries out there that are now stepping into the fold and being involved. And I'll say this, I think we're in the mess we're in. I think the worst pandemic is a pandemic of biblical and civic ignorance. It's just simply not knowing how our system works.
It's a
knowing how God said to.
It's a fear-demic more than a pandemic.
Yes.
Yes, and it's intimidating. I just got back from a flight, and the lady got on there, and she said, you have to wear your mask. This mask has to be up in between sips, in between bites. We will tell you once, and if you're polite, we might tell you twice, but if we have to tell you twice, we're kicking you off this airplane. We've got every bit of information, your name, address, everything, and you will be banned forever. And I mean, it was like Nazis.
My gosh.
And that was recent, you said?
That was Saturday, 2 days ago. Makes me want to never travel.
For the State of the Union, the science changed just in time for them to take off their masks and hug and kiss on each other and be all close. But we still need to wear them. I'm flying out tomorrow, and you just depressed me, man. I was hoping they would be lighter on me tomorrow. Well, sounds like they might be worse.
I tell you what,
and they are. They're like mask Nazis.
Yeah,
I came back from Cancun, and if I could have driven back, I would have. I mean, it was that bad.
Wow.
I've only been thrown off of one flight. I will say, only one. And that was back when I had my Trump 2020 mask. I think that's why she threw me off.
But, really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Oh, it was it was bad. I try to play the game now. I can tell you this. I have scientifically proven that you can eat you can make one bag of chocolate-covered pomegranates last however long the flight is.
There you
Just
go.
so you know.
There you go. You were talking about the Constitution. Tell them what you heard this guy say last week.
You might have seen those that headline, Rick, but there was a guy on The View last week or maybe earlier this week, or last week, said the Constitution is trash and said he could write a better Constitution with a tweet. And went on to talk about how the founders were slave owners and racists and it was all done for white people. Man, that's the one that got me so angry. I was like, that's the height of ignorance and arrogance mixed together.
That is either pure evil or pure ignorance, one of the two, or a mixture of the two.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, Andrew. A combination of both. You know, I do get angry. I get righteously angry at those kind of things happening and people saying those kind of things. And you know what our challenge is? People say stuff like that, and for too long we weren't equipped to respond back. You know, Tim Barton does this great response to all those lies about who we are as a nation in biblical citizenship. It's our second week, and he does this amazing presentation. I mean, when first time I saw him give this thing, my jaw was on the ground the same way the first time I heard David Barton talk about the faith of the founders. When Tim does this history, this black history, and all this, he brings out all these great black heroes in America's history from our revolutionary period, talks about slavery the world over, goes through the whole thing. And when you put it in context, America's story is actually pretty amazing. And I know y'all have had Tim on to talk about it, so I won't go down that rabbit hole. But I just think the problem in the past was we didn't have that information. And I was just reading in Judges. I'm taking people through the Founders Bible this year, you know, one day at a time to read through the whole thing. And I was just reading in Judges. I'm never going to say this name right, and y'all have to correct me on this, but I couldn't even spell it for you. But it's Jephthah, or however he says his name. And he's the one that when this king told him, you guys are going to pay because the children of Israel did this and did that, he goes, no. Let me recite for you exactly what the children of Israel did. It blew me away. He responded with the truth because he knew his history off the top of his head, and he put that thing to rest immediately. Whereas what we've been doing is we let the lie come in, and it unsettles us because we don't know the truth. And we start going, wow, maybe America is evil. Maybe we did invent slavery. Maybe we did all these things because we don't know truth. So getting the truth out there is what's going to allow liberties to survive. I think we're turning a corner on that. I think enough people are starting to say, I want to know what really happened here, and we got enough opportunities to speak that truth, we can change it. But man, that just struck me just the other day when I was reading that in Judges. That's been what we've been missing, is that immediate response to say, no, here's the truth on that.
Yeah, and I was just reading in 1 Kings chapter 18 where Ahab came to Elijah and he says, are you the one that has troubled Israel? And he said, no, I'm not the one that's troubled Israel. It's you and your ungodliness. And that people today, you know, we just saw some conservatives elected right here in Woodland Park, Colorado, on the school board, and they're beginning to make some sweeping changes, and they're doing some things. Good. And in the newspaper, they're saying these conservatives are interjecting their politics into our education, and they're making it like we're the bad guys. They're the ones that introduced all their woke, critical race, cancel,
LGBT.
all that stuff, and they're the ones that are troubling everything. So that's really great point.
You know, if Barton were here, he would do this story, because that's kind of like Nehemiah, right? I mean, when he's rebuilding the wall, what happens? Boy, they start lying about him. They start going back and spreading rumors. They start attacking him with all these lies. And he wasn't having any of it. He stood up, and let's be praying for all. There's so many good people that got elected in this last cycle, and they're going to come under attack, no doubt about it, because they're standing up for truth. So we got to pray for them to have courage, to be bold as lions, to stand for truth, because it's hard. I mean, I've been in the legislature, I've been in those hot seats. You got all this pressure coming at you from every direction, and too often we as Christians and people that do pay attention to politics, too often we don't call the good guys and thank them for doing the right thing. We only call when people do the wrong thing. And so I really encourage everybody, call those school board members, call people in your local community that are doing the right thing and say, hey, I want to thank you. Maybe it's a state rep that filed a good pro-life bill, and maybe it didn't even pass, but you can call them and say, man, thanks for standing for truth. I really appreciate you doing what you're doing, and I'm going to be praying for you. They're going to need it, because the fight's going to be tough for the next couple of years, I think.
So you've been a representative. Let me ask you this. If you were to call your representative, you probably wouldn't get him. You'd have to leave a message or do something. Does that impact them? Do they hear about that?
It does, and it depends. In some states, it's a small, your district is pretty small, and you might even have a state rep answer the phone. But most places now, the districts have gotten a lot bigger. We kind of go on a rule of about 20. If a rep gets 20 communications on the same subject, they really perk up about that. But if you're calling to say, hey, I'm praying for you, or thank you for doing this or working on that, I promise you that staff person, that admin person is going to get that note and that message to the member, because they just don't get that very often. Almost everybody that calls either wants something, they're telling you, you better vote for this or I'm coming after you, or they're chewing you out because you didn't vote the way they wanted to. When you call with some love and appreciation for the things that they did, that's going to get through to them. And then it's going to mean more the next session when you call and say, hey, would you please consider voting for that heartbeat bill, or would you please consider vote, whatever it might be. Build that relationship with those legislators. It really helps down the road.
And our representative, U.S. House representative, is Doug Lamborn, and we have the privilege of knowing him personally, and he's spoken at our school and has done different things. But not everybody has that kind of a connection, and I think sometimes they just wonder about, is it going to do any good? And I remember David Barton saying when he was on my TV program that the #1 complaint that legislatures told him was that people would help them get elected and then they'd never hear from them again, but they hear all of the criticism. So that's right to what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, Rick, the biblical citizenship, I love the name on that. I love it because a lot of pastors are out there and they think like they're not supposed to talk about politics. They're not supposed to get involved. But this is a way where people in the church can maybe go to their pastor and say, hey, pastor, there's this awesome course on biblical citizenship. Can I do this as a small group? Can I do this as a Sunday school class? Have you found that that's a way, your program is a way for people to kind of bridge that hurdle with their pastors and get people talking about the culture without necessarily making the pastor too worried about it?
Yeah, 100%. That was a big part of, I think, what the timing, and God just, laid this out perfectly. But for a lot of pastors, you got really bold pastors out there that have been talking about the culture for a long time, but you got a lot of them that came through seminaries that told them they couldn't do that. And so that's kind of what they've always done. But they're beginning to realize, wow, man, there's a lot of problems in the culture that the Bible speaks to, and I need to be speaking on these things. So they're looking for something like this that would help to educate and equip their flock to really address some of these issues. And we call it that because it's both biblical worldview. What do I learn from the Bible about how I ought to treat my neighbor, how I ought to choose my leaders, that sort of thing. But then our specific constitutional citizenship in our system. And it's kind of teaching, okay, how do I follow God's commands in the nation that I'm living in? That's biblical citizenship under our Constitution. And Richard, we've got a page at our website, Patriot Academy, for you to send specifically to your pastor. I can't remember the URL on it, but if you go to Patriot Academy and follow the biblical citizenship links, you'll get there. But we did a page where a lot of pastors that have been having the class just kind of tell their story. And I mean, some of these pastors started their class, and I'm not kidding you, 400 or 500 people showed up. They had to go to overflow rooms. Wow. People are hungry for this information.
That's awesome.
So that title itself, I think, helps to capture that need that people are looking for. We call it Biblical Citizenship in Modern America. And that website, I think, will help because a lot of the pastors, they should be protecting their flock, of course. And they're much more open now to something like this to help teach that. And it's not done from any particular partisan perspective or even denominational perspective. It's literally just, what does the Bible say about how you should form your societies and treat your neighbors and set up your government? And how did our founding fathers follow that model? And what can we do now inside that model to protect that biblical system that our founders gave us?
Well, Richard mentioned about pastors saying they shouldn't get involved in politics. But when you're talking about abortion, that's not politics. You got people in your church that are murdering babies. Mm-hmm. And then you talk about the transgender, and you talk about homosexuality and even climate control. I believe climate control is nothing but a ruse of the devil. Mm-hmm. Climate fluctuates. And I've seen graphs on this thing, and they are attributing this to man-made climate change, and they're using this as, I believe, in my opinion, opinions are like noses. Everybody's got one, usually has a couple of holes in it. But I believe that the environmentalists and climate change things and their push to get rid of fossil fuels are what's empowered Putin to be able to go in and take over Ukraine. And people are dying because Christians aren't standing up and countering these things. So it's not politics, it's just standing for truth. Anything that's not
Yeah,
the
it's
truth is of the devil.
That's right. And it's just life, right? And the Bible applies to everything in life. We just happen to live in a system where we're in charge. We are Caesar. And so the Bible speaks to us on how to do that appropriately. I tell people all the time, you know, I can't imagine you driving away from your church and saying, the pastor was on fire today. That was a great message about how to be a godly husband and father or mother and wife. And I wish we could apply that when we get home, but there's a separation of church and home. Nobody does that, right? I mean, you don't say, I wish I could use that sermon on work ethic tomorrow at work and how to treat your employees or your employer. But man, there's a separation of work and church. Nobody does that. Why do we buy into this separation of church and state? The Bible applies to everything, including how we form our societies and our government. And you hit it, Andrew. I mean, all those issues you're talking about, those are biblical issues. They're not political issues. They're biblical issues, including climate change. That's Romans 1. We're worshiping the creation instead of the creator.
Yep.
And we're being dishonest about it as well, just like you said.
I just made 10 television programs on that very thing today. It was really good.
On environment, the environment?
Well, on Romans chapter 1. And that was just part of it, but that was there. So we're going to start taking questions here pretty soon, but you know, this is my opinion, but I think that what you're doing, Rick, is actually more beneficial and making a bigger impact than you being a state representative. I really do. Well, politics is just so bogged down with all of the junk that's going on, but what you're doing, this is really encouraging, and I believe a lot of our viewers are probably encouraged by hearing that this is taking place.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. We definitely need people to run, and we want people serving in that arena. I do think God called me away from that to help be an equipper, basically, and an exhorter, and encourage others to do that and train, especially these young people. That's probably why, you know, you said in the opening, I was bringing some hope tonight. I think I'm biased. I mean, I get to see things most people don't get to see. I get to see all these kids, this remnant that God is raising up. So I've got more hope for the future than most people, because I go all over the country and I get to be around this kind of cream of the crop, these kids that God's raising up that are passionate, that love God, love his word, are applying it. So I just want to pass that on to everybody and say there's hope. God's raising up a remnant. Don't give up. And our duty doesn't change. So even if we do lose, you know, that's the other thing about this. I mean, everybody loves to quote Jeremiah, right? We've all got the coffee mug or the pillow. I know the plans I have for you. Where were they going? 70 years of captivity. So even if we lose, God's got plans for us. He says, marry your wives, plant your gardens, build your houses. Our duty doesn't change either way. But I actually see a lot of hope in America. I see a ton of people waking up that never would have even watched our program tonight. They would have never listened to the three of us talk about what we're talking about now. But now, boy, they're paying attention. They're like, wait, I'm listening to this. What can government do? How much can it manage my life? What does God say about this? There's an opportunity to convert an entire generation to the principles of liberty and biblical worldview if we'll take advantage of this opportunity God's given us.
And you know, I think I could relate this to Russia's invasion of the Ukraine, that Russia is much bigger, they got more resources, and if push comes to shove and you just throw everything you've got, they're guaranteed to win. But they did not anticipate the resistance that they're getting from the Ukrainians, and they have suffered greatly in the eyes of the world. And we even have something better than that. We've got the promise that if we resist the devil, he'll flee from us. And if we, you know, Putin was just counting on them caving in and surrendering. And I don't think he counted on this, and it's given him pause. And man, I think Satan has counted on the church not standing up, but we're in a great awakening. I think good things are happening. It's awesome.
That is awesome.
Praise God. Awesome. So let's see if we got any questions here.
All right. Well, we sure do. We've got a couple questions here, Rick, on the Convention of States and that movement, and was wondering if you could explain what is that, and do you think that's a good idea or not?
Yeah, you know, this came about right at the end of the Constitutional Convention in 1787. They'd done all the work. They'd been at it for months. I mean, they're ready to go home. They're done. And just 2 days before the end of the convention, Colonel George Mason gets up and he says, guys, we messed up because we've designed this system. We've created this federal government, and we all know the depravity of man. We know the nature of man. Eventually, the people running the federal government are going to steal power. They're going to expand beyond what we gave them the power to do. And we got to have a way to put them back in the box. And we've set this system up where only the federal government can do a constitutional amendment to put them back in the box. He said, that's not going to work. We've got to have a way to do it without them. So that's where the language went into Article 5 of the Constitution, so that the states can be the ones to overrule the federal government without the federal government even having a say. So all of our amendments up to this point, we got 27 of them in the Constitution. All of them were done first in Congress, because it's a two-step process. Congress proposes the amendments, and then the states ratify the amendments. What Colonel Mason did was he said, when they get out of control, the states need to be able to propose the amendments, and then it can come back to all 50 states for us today. Back then, obviously 13, but it can come back to all the states, and they can do the ratification process. And the crazy thing is, it was a mic drop moment. There was no objection. It was unanimous. Everybody was like, oh, wow, you're exactly right, Colonel. How did we miss that? Well, we haven't used it all these years because, honestly, I don't think we've been to this point where we absolutely have to use it. And so now there's a movement built around this phrase in Article 5 called a Convention of States for Proposing Amendments. Now, you're going to hear some opposition to this. In fact, I used to be against it. Barton, we used to both be against it because we hadn't really studied it close enough. And we thought, when I say we used to be against it, that was 15 years ago. But we thought, well, you know, if they all get together, they might amend do some crazy amendments. But once we really started studying it, we went back and studied what Colonel Mason said and how they put it into the Constitution. We realized, wait a minute, the convention is just essentially a gathering to propose amendments, to debate this, and then say, you know what, we want to overrule the Supreme Court case in Obergefell. We don't want the federal government defining marriage. Or we want to overrule the Supreme Court on a certain thing, or the Congress on a certain thing, maybe mandates, we'll see. But they just propose the amendments, and then the states get to decide if they want to ratify, and 38 have to ratify. So it's going to be hard to get an amendment through, but I truly believe that we can get some amendments that will strip the power from the federal government and give it back to the states, so we can get rid of these $20 trillion deficits and out of control federal government trying to make everybody be the same. They're trying to make you guys in Colorado be California, trying to make Texas be California. They're trying to make everybody be like San Francisco. And then when a conservative gets elected, they try to make everybody be like Texas, or like, you know, that's not the way it's supposed to be. Federalism means each state gets to have its own personality, and the feds only do what they're supposed to do. That is a really long answer to your question. I apologize for that. But all that to say, I absolutely support it. I support it so much so I believe this. If we don't do a convention of states, we're headed to civil war. We have to get the federal government out of our daily lives and let each state have its own personality, and then people can vote with their feet. In fact, just a couple of days ago, West Virginia joined Convention of States. So now we have 18 states. We've had 3 states pass it in just the last 3 weeks. Momentum is building. I think we're going to get there, and I think it's going to be instrumental in saving the country.
So how many states have to be unified on this to make it work?
34 have to call for the convention, and then once you have the convention, 26 states, a majority of states, have to vote for proposing an amendment, and then it goes back to all 50 states, and 38 have to ratify. So that was a 3-step process. 34 states in step 1, 26 states at the convention voting yes on a proposal, and then 38 states actually ratifying it, which means we probably won't get a life amendment or a marriage amendment, but we will get structural amendments that simply shift the power from the feds to the states. Things like term limits would probably get passed on both members of Congress, and my big pet peeve, on judicial, on judges that serve in the federal judiciary. I think they ought to be 10 years and gone, not this 30, 40-year thing.
Man, that's great.
Yeah, that was
Appreciate
really,
that information. That's
actually
good.
really informative. Where can people go to get more information about that issue?
Conventionofstates.com. And one of the cool things, they're the largest grassroots movement in the country right now, 5 million strong. So this thing is growing like crazy, and it's kind of like being a Constitution coach. In fact, we partner with them, and they use our Constitution classes. But anybody can do it, and you can sign up on their website, click on your state, and find out what the status is in your state. And even if your state's passed it, they're just good people to be around and join up for Constitution classes or other issues. But conventionofstates.com is a great place to join and be a part of the movement.
Great.
All right. Well, here's another question, Rick. Now, I think this question kind of goes at the Constitution, as in what constitutional power does Congress have? And they're asking about the Iran nuclear deal. If it goes through, is there anything Congress can do to stop it?
You know, technically it should be a treaty, and the Senate should have to approve it. And you know, this president, though, believe me, he does not care about following the Constitution. All of his executive orders that have overreached, these mandates that are completely unconstitutional. I mean, there is no federal authority to do mask or vaccine mandates. It's insane how far out of control they are. And the states need to push back a lot harder on that, honestly. But same thing with some of these things. On the international level, typically we're going to lean to the president. We want the president being the one to negotiate those deals. But it's one of the reasons the founder said, when you do that, that treaty's got to come back to the Senate to be approved, so that we know that there is support in the country for that. And you're putting your finger on it too there, Richard. I mean, this Iranian deal is so bad, and we literally have the Russians negotiating for us with the Iranians right now. That's how inept the Biden administration is. The amount of weakness that we're projecting around the world is so bad for our country. So I encourage people to pray for the president, pray for the people surrounding the president, and pray that miraculously somehow, remember he used Nebuchadnezzar and Xerxes and all these others, pray that somehow he can change hearts in Washington, D.C. and in this administration, and we can somehow find our way back to peace through strength, because right now we're getting a lot of, shall we say, not peace through weakness.
So you mentioned the vaccine mandates and that there's no power. Can you explain the idea of enumerated powers and limited government as it's found in the Constitution?
It's probably, Richard, the most important question you could ask, because that's really where we got off track. We lost this idea of authority. In all of our classes, biblical citizenship, all our Constitution classes, David Barton walks through these examples of who has authority and jurisdiction for certain things. Because what we've done for the last couple of decades is we've just said, oh, I've got a problem, I'm going to go to government and ask government to fix it, whether it's state or local or federal government, instead of saying, which level of government has authority to deal with this issue? When I was a state rep, if a bill came across my desk, my first question was not, is this a good idea? My first question was, do I have authority? Did the people of Texas give me authority under the state constitution here to even consider this issue? It might be a real problem that people have. It might be a great solution for that problem. But if it's outside my authority, then it's wrong for me to even address the issue. And the founding fathers gave only a very limited amount of authority to the federal government. It's actually 17 specific enumerated powers in the Constitution that they have. Anything outside of that is unconstitutional. Department of Education, nowhere in the Constitution. FDA, nowhere in the Constitution. CDC, nowhere in the Constitution. And yet we let them do these things because we haven't overruled their, shall I say, stealing of power and their overreach. And so enumerated powers, man, we spend a lot of time on that in the classes, because we need to know what the proper role is. Just like as a father, I need to know what my authority is with my family. The church has certain authority. The state has certain authority. None of those entities are bad. The federal government's not a bad entity. I believe government's a God-created institution, and I think our system was inspired by God. The problem is when it gets outside its lane and it's doing stuff it was never supposed to do in the first place, and it's our job, we the people, to put them back in that box.
You know, I remember an example. You can give the exact details. I'll mess it up. But Davy Crockett, there was somebody that needed help, and he came and said that the government does not have the authority to be giving money directly to a personal need. And so he voted against it, but then he gave to it personally and helped raise money for this person. You remember what I'm talking about?
Exactly right. Yeah, it was a fire in D.C. and that even just that immediate reaction to say, wait a minute, if we do this, then we're going to have to pay for bailing out everybody on everything. And Barton gives an example in our class about the codfish industry back in the founding era, and they had some sort of storm or situation that was causing a big problem for their industry, and a bunch of them were going bankrupt. And people went to Congress and said, you got to bail us out. And James Madison's like, what are you doing? That is not the job of the federal government. If we do this for them, we're going to have to do it for everybody else. And boy, wouldn't it have been nice if our congressman had said the same thing in 2008 when they did the bailouts of everybody, and in 2020 when they bailed everybody out with COVID. I mean, this idea of jurisdiction has got to come back. Otherwise, we're just going to spend ourselves into oblivion. And worse than spending ourselves into oblivion, it's tyranny, because you have government micromanaging your life. Just like you mentioned earlier with the schools, teaching kids all this sexuality stuff. That's not the authority of the state. They shouldn't be doing that in our public schools. But we've forgotten which jurisdiction belongs on which entity. And if we come back to that, we can have good government again.
And we had E.W. Jackson, and he brought out that in the 1860s that the blacks had something like 96% of all black families were intact, husband and wife. In the 1960s, it was still right around 90%, but as soon as they introduced the Great Society and started putting out welfare, it's dropped down to 14%? of blacks are raised in
Yeah.
a regular family, and the government stepping in and starting to pay people for having children out of wedlock has destroyed the nuclear family.
You know, that's another example of why we need to preach about politics. You're not really talking about politics, you're talking about truth. And if the government follows an ungodly idea like welfare, then it hurts people, hurts families, and destroys the things we care about.
Very good.
Yeah, because God's ways are not only right, they work best. You know, if you actually do them, you get better results. And I know you guys have talked about it before, but just like taking care of the poor, I mean, God didn't tell government to take care of the poor. He told us to take care of the poor.
Right.
And when government does it, so little of the money even gets to the people in need. When we do it through our churches and through our private organizations or individually is even best, because you get to help somebody and you get to really have much more than just writing a check. You're actually there to hold them accountable. You're actually there to mentor them, bring them to the Lord. I mean, God's way works best. And it's what's sad is that we've let government basically replace the church and replace God in so many of those ways. And we, the church, we're going to have to be the ones to stand up and say, all right, authority and jurisdiction, government, get out of the way. This is our job. We're going to step up and do what we're supposed to do as the church.
And that's not only true with welfare, but did you know that the school system was started by the church? And they used to we give away that New England primer, and it was all about God. And now, because the church turned that over to the government, which it's not their job, the Department of Education, I think we'd be better off without it. And that we gave it to the government, and now it's just propaganda. It's not education at all. It's terrible.
Well, and I'll say on the good news side of that one, homeschooling has tripled over the last year and a half. All over the country. People are getting into private schools and homeschooling, and they're getting out of these government schools where, honestly, the corruption was revealed. I mean, all the people staying home and seeing on the screen what the teachers were teaching, the corruption, the rot underneath was revealed. The light was shown on it, and parents are leaving in droves, and I think that's a really good thing.
I tell you what, those moms in Loudoun County, Virginia, they ignited a fire all over the nation, and good things are happening. You don't have to be in government. You don't have to be an elected official to make a difference if you just get involved where you are.
That's right.
It's awesome.
It's so good.
Well, Rick, we got a question here that I think you'll like. It's about the Second Amendment. And this viewer wants to know whether the government has the power to track information on gun ownership. What are your thoughts?
You knew asking a Texan about the Second Amendment was going to be a fun way to end the show, right? We have 2 hours for me to answer this. Is that no? The short answer is absolutely not. They do not. That would absolutely violate the Second Amendment. And here again, jurisdiction and authority. The founders thought it was our jurisdiction, our authority to defend ourselves. They said, if you get robbed in your own home, it's your own fault and negligence. It's a responsibility on our part to be ready to defend ourselves and our family. That's one reason we're so big. One of our Constitution classes is actually called Constitutional Defense of Your Family and Freedom. And what we do is during the day, we have the best instructors on the planet teaching you how to handle a firearm safely and effectively, a handgun, and be able to defend yourself and your family with it. And then at night, I teach on the Second Amendment and the history of the Constitution. So they get intellectual ammunition for how to defend the family, but they also get physical training for defending their family. You know, Proverbs says in 2 different places that a fool walks blindly on and suffers the consequences, but a wise person foresees that danger and takes precautions. And we've got now about 4 million violent crimes a year in America. We've got DAs that are not even prosecuting crime unless it's murder. We've got liberal politicians letting the criminals out, in mass. It's just crazy what's happening out there. So I encourage people, be the wise person. I was the fool for a long time. I had my handgun license, but I didn't get trained, so I didn't carry. For the longest time, that was me. And 10 years ago, it really changed when I finally got some professional training, and now I'm confident in being able to defend my family. I encourage everybody to do that. It was a great question about the tracking. That's something we have to fight legislatively, both at the congressional level and the state level, but definitely would be unconstitutional for them to do that. And frankly, they're doing it. The ATF is getting all these records from these stores that go out of business. They're tracking hundreds of millions of transactions. It's very wrong, but there's some good members of Congress, in fact, from Colorado, Lauren Boebert and others that are calling them out for that. And I think after the 2022 elections, we'll be correcting that.
Lauren Boebert has been here on our program. She's spoken at our Truth and Liberty conference. That woman's stronger than horseradish.
Great. I claim her as one of ours. She's a graduate of our program. She's been through our Constitutional Live program. And so I always claim her every chance I get because she's doing such a great job. I love her.
She got criticized for yelling out at Biden during the State of the Union, and she said she'd do it again.
Wow.
I loved it.
Somebody needed to hold him accountable.
Yeah. Drill, baby, drill. I think her dress
that's
said.
what her, she was wearing a shirt.
Yeah. Oh, well. Rick, we got time for one more? Okay, this person wants to know, they say, why do people say our founding fathers were Masons? Where did this view originate?
Yeah, a handful of them were, a very small number of them were for a limited period of time. And David's got a whole book on this called Masonry and the Founding Fathers. You can get that at wallbuilders.com. It's pretty quick read, but I'll just tell you in general, number one, Masonry was very different in the founding era than it is now, and very different than it was under Albert Pike when it became very anti-Christian. So it wasn't anti-Christian here in America when some of the founding fathers were involved, because most people extrapolate from that. Well, if they were Masons, they must have been anti-Christian. It was a very different animal back then, but it was also very few of them. A lot of people see George Washington. There's this painting that goes around of him dressed up in Masonic regalia and doing a ceremony. He never did that stuff. He was a Mason for a short period of time so that he could fraternize with the troops during the war. After that, he never went to lodge. If those folks that have seen National Treasure, when Charles Carroll, the last surviving founding signer of the Declaration, is on the carriage and he hands down the secret Masonic message to Nicolas Cage's character and all that stuff. None of that never happened. Why? Because Charles Carroll was never even a Mason at all, ever. Anyway, there's a lot there, but bottom line, it wasn't what it is today or even what it was in the 1800s, and just a handful of the founders were actually Masons in the first place.
Yeah, and I had David Barton explain that same thing on my program, and he said not only was it different, but when it began to start changing, they actually passed laws and outlawed it, and they did away with Masonry for a while by the government, and then it was reorganized, and what we see today is not even the same thing. So there's no comparison.
Right.
So
yep,
it's
exactly
totally
right. In
different.
fact, John Quincy Adams was elected on the anti-Mason party when he went to Congress.
Yeah. That's amazing. I tell you, every criticism that people are having against our liberties and trying to bring up critical race theory and wokeness and all of this kind of stuff, if people knew the truth, what you're teaching, Rick, it would diffuse those things, and our ignorance has empowered these people to do what they're doing. The truth, if you turn on the light, it exposes the darkness, and the truth is we just don't know the truth about what we've got.
That's right.
It's amazing.
That's right.
We're
It's
just
the
about
exact
out
opposite of
of
what
we're
we
just
do.
about out of
Yeah.
time, but I want you to once again encourage them to join your website. Where is one place that they can go to get all of this information that you've been talking about?
Easiest place to go is patriotacademy.com. Patriotacademy.com, and all the programs are there on the website. Thank you so much for having me on, guys. I really enjoyed it. This has been great. Iron sharpening iron. I feel like we've done that tonight.
So do you have a place that they can give and participate in what you're doing?
Absolutely. They can do that at the website. You can sponsor a kid to go to Patriot Academy or sponsor a military veteran. We do one just for military veterans so that they can see from inside the belly of the beast. They serve on the Senate floor, and almost all of them leave going, wow, now I know what I was defending. I really get it. And a lot of them go home and run for office, which is a really
Awesome.
good thing as well. Yeah.
Well, Rick, thanks for being with us. We're just about out of time. We also want to thank CTN for carrying this on some of their stations. We appreciate you doing that. And of course, we want to thank all of you who watch. We have tens of thousands of people that join us every week for our Truth and Liberty. It's always at 6 p.m. Mountain Time on Monday evenings, and we have guests from all over the world that have been on here, and people that are making a difference, and I believe it's an encouragement to you. Praise God, we're standing up and turning on a light instead of just cursing the darkness. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, Rick, for being with us. God bless you all. And remember, we do this every Monday night. You can go to our website, and we've got a lot of materials there that would be a real blessing for you. So check it out, and God bless you. We'll see you next week.
Join us next time for the Truth and Liberty broadcast. Find tonight's episode and related articles and links at truthandliberty.net. Truth and Liberty is viewer supported. If you'd like to help us continue our live casts, you can make a donation at truthandliberty.net.